Beautiful. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the How We Heal series. This is Melanie Olenberg. I'll be your moderator today. The How We Heal series is a series put on by the Inner Arts Collective members. We're a conscious co-working community located here in Toronto, and it's we've been in existence now for about 7 years. The panel series that we've put together it was initially designed to be a response to COVID because so many issues were coming up for the clients of a lot of our members. And we decided though that in addition to supporting people through this challenging time around the world, the discussions that we're choosing are actually going to be helpful for many months and years to come. So before we get started, because we are joining you here from Toronto, I understand that there's a lot of people from all over the world joining us today. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. The Inner Arts Collective acknowledges that we're on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, now many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. So if you could just take a moment, please, everybody, to close your eyes, honor the land we're on today. The ancestors of the land, as well as your bloodline. The work that we do in these panel series, it's not only helpful for us today, but it's helpful for generations to come. Having these conversations is a really important part of paving a very different future. And especially in regards to a topic such as sexuality, we're in new territory, yet it's one of the oldest aspects of who we are. So I'm really excited to embark on this conversation. We've got 3 panelists today: Jennifer Polansky, Sumeet Saini, and Monica Kovacs. Now, each of these guys, they really bring a unique perspective. So I'd like to hand the floor over to them to introduce themselves. And guys, when you introduce yourselves, would you mind not just giving our viewers an idea of who you are and your profession and your work, but also a little bit about your lens around sexuality? Like what unique lens do you bring to this conversation today? Who would like to get started?
Okay, I can go. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us for discussing this important topic today. My name is Sumeet. I'm a writer, comedian, coach, and psychotherapist from Toronto. And I adopt a holistic and spiritual approach that addresses the needs of mind, body, and soul in my work with millennial and Gen Z men. So sexuality has become more complex than it ever has been before, with many new forms and challenges in our modern fast-paced world. And for me, where I come from is that I believe that technology has had a particularly damaging effect on men's sexuality. And so, like there's a lot in our culture, especially technology, that's affected that. And so my solution to that, what's helped me, are certain spiritual principles and practices that have allowed me to heal issues related to sexuality and express it in a healthy way, especially in terms of channeling sexual energy into productivity and creativity, which I now teach to other men. Yeah.
Thank you, Sumeet. Monica or Jennifer, would you like to go next? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'll go. All right, can you guys hear me okay? Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Wonderful. So hi everyone. So you might hear the beautiful beach next to me as I'm sitting here. So I'm a somatic sex educator, sexological body worker. I call myself a sacred sexuality and embodiment coach, and my elevator speech. It's hard to summarize what I do, but essentially I work with the tools of breath, sound, movement, and touch to help bring people further into their bodies, to connect with their eros, their life force energy, and to overcome any challenges that they might be experiencing in the sexual realm through experiential work. So one of the things that's really unique to my work and to my training is that I'm trained in full body touch. So that may include genital and anal touch as well during sessions. So as I session with clients, clients may receive full body touch. They request that at their consent, and we can actually work with a client's arousal energy in session. And it's a one-way touch modality, so it's a wonderful opportunity for clients to really focus on themselves, unlike in a partnered interaction, often where attention is directed out, and people tend to worry about things like performance and reciprocation. What's unique in the sessions that I do is that as clients are receiving, they get to go inward and really track their own energy, notice what's coming up for them, and work through any challenges in that way. And in the meantime, I'm watching their breath, watching their posture, where they're holding tension in their body, and coaching them through their experience. So that gives a little summary of my work. I'm very passionate about experiential learning because I think there's so much availability of talk therapy, and it's good, it's very beneficial, and it covers one half of the equation. But it came to this work through noticing that there was a need for people to actually be guided through experiences in order to come out with something different, to learn something different in their body, because often they might be too scared to try something. A lot of female clients I have might not be familiar with their own anatomy, their own sexual anatomy, and how that works, how things are connected. And they might read an exercise in a book saying, oh, go home, grab a handheld mirror, do these exercises, see what's there, here's this, here's that. But to actually have someone hold your hand as you're doing it and show you how things move together in the body and create an experience, it takes that learning to the next level, and I find really empowers my clients to integrate that learning and be able to take it with them to the outside world. So I'm very passionate about doing that. And to speak a little bit to the lens that I bring, I see sexual energy as being connected with every other aspect of a person's life. I don't see sexuality as something separate. So often when someone comes to me and they're experiencing some sort of sexual challenge, I would ask, well, what's going on in the rest of your life? Do you make time for pleasure in the rest of your life? Are you always in a goal-oriented state of mind, always chasing deadlines and projects? How are you feeling emotionally? What is your relationship with spirituality, and how does that factor in with your sexuality? So it's a very integrated approach, an integrative exploration. And I'll chat more about that later and how it all fits together as the questions come up. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Polansky. What I am passionate about is guiding women toward their divinity, guiding them home to their bodies. And so much of this has to do with sensuality, sexuality, with their own views of sexuality, with cultural views that have been imposed and impressed on them. And so a lot of the work that I do is first acknowledging where we're at right now. What are your views in this moment? And allowing that to be okay. And allowing. It's that practicing that art of allowing. And so the work that I do is mainly with women. And the reason that I'm working mainly with women is that I want to help change the conversation around our bodies and how we relate to our bodies, to ourselves, to who and what we are in society, to what our purpose is, to the way that we receive pleasure and the way that we view pleasure and its impact in our lives, its place in our lives. And as we come home to ourselves and our own body and our own divinity and being able to express that in a good way, and to claim our divinity, then our conversations with men are going to change, with the boys that we raise, with our friends, with our partners, our lovers, with our parents, with our fathers, with our siblings, our brothers. And so as we come home to ourselves, as we come to understand our importance and the importance of pleasure in our lives, and that sexuality really is for us, it's the most powerful creative force in the universe, so powerful that it can actually create a human life as well as conceive projects and ideas and dreams and visions. As we come to understand what that means to us, then the conversation changes, and I believe that that's how we come to shift the world and the collective view on how we work together. So I'll say that much for now, and I'm really, really happy to be here. Melanie, you are muted.
There we go. Oh my goodness. You think, I don't know, I wonder where Mercury is in my chart today. So, you know, as I met with the panelists it was a few days ago now, just to get a feel for each other and where we were coming from, and talk about some of the themes that are coming up in practice so that I can have a general idea of how to frame some of the questions. And one of the things that we were going to spend some time on, and I'm actually going to bring us in a slightly different direction. I was going to start by asking what sexuality was from your guys' point of view, and how do we, just so we understand that we're on the same page, we're talking about the same thing. But my feeling is that over the course of the response to the questions, which I think we need a little bit more time for, that this will come out, that you will, through answering all of these other questions, your view of sexuality and what it is will emerge. So if you could keep that in your mind, and I'll just dive into the next question. So we live in a really interesting time. There's a lot of cultural norms and expectations that are going on that are impacting sexuality and desire as well. And I'm just wondering about your guys' experience on what are the cultural norms and expectations that you're noticing in your practice around sexuality, and the impacts, you know, positive and negative, so that the listeners can understand some of the themes that you're being exposed to right now. What's coming up for you guys?
Okay, so I can go. What I'm noticing now culturally, a big norm is this concept of as transactional. You know, especially embodied through something like Tinder. You know, premarital sex is a big norm, right? And I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, but we have to look at what are the consequences of that, right? Because for a long time in a lot of cultures, premarital sex of value, right? And there's going to be pros and cons to both non-premarital and premarital sex, but if you do, it's very common now for people to have sex before marriage. And so what I'm seeing now is that, especially with young people, there's a lack of, self-development with really creating that relationship with themselves first, because sex now is so pervasive. I think that's another big thing that's happening now in our culture, over sexualization. This is everywhere in media, advertisements, movies, products, everywhere you look, billboards, sex is like constantly sex screaming in your face, and that is as a result of sexual liberation. So what I'm saying is that that there is an overemphasis on physical intimacy is what we're seeing, and lack of emotional intimacy, especially as a tool and a resource that can lead up to the physical intimacy, right? Because as a culture, we're not really encouraging people to develop a relationship with themselves first, right? Which can enrich a relationship with another person. It can enrich the sexuality, because if a person's not really connecting to themselves or not spending a lot of time developing themselves, then when they enter a relationship, there's not going to be much emotional intimacy. There's going to be much to connect over, not much interest, passions, hobbies. So that's what I'm seeing, a lot of physical intimacy, one night stand kind of thing, meeting, this whole hookup culture, meeting in bars and nightclubs. I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but this is what I'm seeing a lot of. So, there's this left courtship, right? And yet, of really spending, because another expectation norm is, sex on the first date or within like first 3 days. I have to look at historically, this is way beyond the norm, because, people used to take a lot of time to just, is this person trustworthy? Is this person deserving of my body? Because when you have sex with someone on the first date, with the first 3 dates, or even in like 3 months, or within the first month, it's not a very long time to get to know one. And most of us are putting on a mask, especially at first. So I feel like it's not honoring bodies, like, who are we allowing ourselves to be with? Could this person, be a liar? Could they be manipulative? And that's not something you really get to know in like one date or the few dates. So it's like, honor thyself, you know? Yeah, because as much as sexuality involves two people, it also involve your relationship connection with yourself, right? How much do you love yourself? Do you desire yourself, your projects, your passions? And the more you delve into that, the more you can enjoy that with another person, right? So for me, those are the things that I'm noticing. Just to sum it up, it's like a courtship, you know, physical intimacy, taking intimacy over emotional intimacy, and sex really not being sacred anymore due to its ubiquity, it's everywhere. So,
Right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Jennifer, what are you noticing?
I think Sumeet makes a really great point. I really, really loved that about coming into ourselves first and really knowing ourselves. What I find a lot is there's a feeling that for women, our sexuality is for someone else. It's for someone else's pleasure. It's for someone else's enjoyment. And I think very much this comes from the way that sex has been shown to us, is that we haven't actually been shown women being honored and worshiped in their pleasure and being asked what feels good for you. We've only seen one side of it, and that side is usually not very supportive for women really feeling their own sensitivity and their own inner goddess. And so that's one thing, is that a lot of women will feel that it's for someone else. And then another one, I wanted to touch on this idea of the the roles that we've been taught of men being the pursuer and women being the ones that are pursued. And again, we say men, women, but everyone within them has masculine, feminine. And so it's the masculine that pursues, that does. It's the feminine that desires to be seen and that simply is. And so we can, it doesn't necessarily have to look like the man pursuing the woman. And I think that as we have more conversations like this, and again, as women come more into what actually feels good for me and get more comfortable talking about their desires and their wants and their needs, then those roles are going to start to balance out. And then, oh shoot, there was something that came up for me twice as I was talking, but then, this, again, what Sumeet was saying, such a great point of this pressure of having sex really soon, right away or within the first few dates. And, you know, when is a good time to have sex, to begin having sexual intimacy? And I think that communication is the most important thing, is that if you're going to have sex with someone, if you're going to, not even sex, not even intercourse, if you're going to start exploring each other's bodies in an intimate way, in a sexual way, are you able to speak in a way that's intimate? Because having emotional intimacy is going to make it even more comfortable and more authentic when you have sexual intimacy. And so this question of, you know, when to do it, when's a good time? Well, are you able to talk about it? How deep can you go in your conversation? And just like Sumeet was saying, how do you even know this person? How do you know what kind of person you're opening your body to? Well, talk about it. And if it's uncomfortable to talk about it and have those deep conversations, then chances are it's not the right time for sexual intimacy. And so that's the marker that I would use and that I have used, is that how comfortable am I going deep with this person emotionally? And that's when I'm ready to start sharing my body, the most sacred part of myself.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. So there's some similarities between what you guys have said so far. Monica, what have you noticed are some cultural norms, expectations, and their impact?
So many points,
Your connection is really slow.
both from Sumeet and Jennifer. I would agree with a lot of what was shared since the Victorian era, and we're in this thing, what a lot of people get confused around sex. Oh no, is that better? Yeah, I apologize. So there's a real pressure to have sex soon. And I almost get the sense from a lot of the people that I speak to is that their reasons for perhaps diving into a sexual connection, let's say on the first date, are not really clear. It's just like a cultural expectation. They're doing it because that's what everyone else is doing, and that's just the thing that we do today, but there isn't a real sense of readiness and aligned mind, heart, and body that's in a full yes to this person in front of them. And even though on a cognitive level, we might be able to discern, okay, this person seems relatively safe. If I'm deciding to have sex with them, they're not gonna like whip out a chainsaw, you know, like that level. That's like one level of safety, but there's that deeper level of safety that Jennifer was speaking to, that emotional safety of, can I be fully seen by this person? And that's so important if we if we can't be vulnerable, then we're missing out on a piece of our sexuality. Act, if two bodies are just coming together and creating friction, that's a very one-dimensional sexual experience. And we add depth and dimension through emotional intimacy, through spiritual intimacy. So I think what's been normalized is that one-dimensional sexual experience, just pure friction, and people then think, oh, well, that's all there is, and that gets boring really fast. And after that boredom comes shutdown, comes disinterest, or perhaps seeking new thrills, seeking more danger, or whatever it is that people start gravitating towards. And to speak to a lot of women's experiences as well, I think I notice in my practice that many women push themselves into sexual experiences before they're ready, because they sense that there might be an expectation from their partner. There's a social expectation, a cultural expectation. And if a woman isn't fully aroused before she's penetrated, if her whole body isn't yet desiring and wanting that penetration to occur, then it becomes painful, and over time it becomes desensitizing. So I see a lot of women who just lack a connection with their genitals through many, many years of just chronic bad sex, getting it over with, doing it because it's an expectation. So I think shifting our awareness around this topic and learning to come to sexuality more mindfully is going to be key. And yes, maintaining sovereignty, freedom of choice, everyone being able to act in accordance with what they want as that relates to their body, but to also bring intentionality to it. I want to speak to some of my experiences in various sacred sexuality communities, Tantric, Shamanic communities that have allowed for interaction between participants. And when that interaction occurs, there's always a deep conversation around it. As you approach an individual, if you see an individual that you're interested in, you approach them and ask them, are they open to whatever it is that you'd like to share with them? And then the discussion begins around what is to be shared, and the experience you each would like to have, what your expectations are around it. And there's just so much thought and consideration put into it, and a real sense of presence that's brought to the interaction as well. Even if it is a one-time interaction, or even if you don't know each other well, there's still intentionality. Each person in that interaction knows why they're entering into that contract for that moment, and what they're giving, what they're receiving. So I think it's important for more people to sit with that as they enter into sexual contracts with others, and what that is to entail for all participants.
Right. It reminds me, it's a nice segue into the next question, actually, Monica. I was really wanting to hear from you guys around, or whoever can respond to it, around sexuality and power dynamics, specifically power exchange, authority exchange, commonly associated in the BDSM and kink communities, and especially around overcoming shame, how to create a healthy relationship when one has a desire for a power exchange that might be really opposed to their values in day-to-day life. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, a lot of my clients share about that, around an interest in power exchange, kink, BDSM, and often it's not. They conceive of it as something very toxic, because often what's portrayed, maybe in porn or in society through non-consensual experiences, is a very toxic manifestation of that. I believe there is a sacred dimension to power exchange that can be explored. It's something that I've had a personal interest in for most of my life and have explored very deeply. I feel it's a very archetypal realm. It's a very sacred realm. Again, when it's entered into with intentionality and when there's conversation, and also most importantly, when whatever acts are taking place come through an open heart. And this is really the main difference, I think, between abuse and conscious power. Just moves through the lower chakras. It's not conscious. There is no discussion. There is no consent. It's just the will of one dominating over the will of another. But when the heart is open, then I see the dominant is taking full responsibility for both their well-being and the submissive's well-being, and creating a really safe environment where the submissive's nervous system can relax and move into a state of full surrender as the dominant guides the journey. And it's quite beautiful. It's quite exhilarating for the submissive to be able to place that much trust in someone who they know will keep them safe and guide them through a sensory journey, sensual, sexual energy, being involved in that whole dynamic, and just not having to make decisions. And I think that's where the submissive urge comes from. I'd say far more people present with a curiosity towards submission rather than domination. And I think, it's a counterbalance to all the responsibility that we experience in life, just all the things that we have to take care of and be vigilant around in our day-to-day lives. And I think many people crave an environment where they can just let go of all of that and not have to think, not have to make any decisions, just do what they're told in a way where they know it's safe, and where they are fully witnessed in that and held in the heart of someone else as they're being taken on that journey.
Thanks a lot.
I'd love to speak into that. That's really beautiful, Monica. What comes up for me when you speak into that is how the qualities of the feminine and the masculine, and especially, it makes sense living in a hyper masculine society, how so many people are craving that sacred space, ultimately at the core of it, craving that space to just surrender and to just be. And I love what you share about how when it's done with consciousness in a sacred space, and where there's communication and an understanding of why, what is it that I love about this, what is it that I need, and creating such sacredness around it. That's really beautiful, to be able to surrender into a space, or to take on another role that perhaps one isn't able to exude in their life, maybe taking a little more control and being able to explore in that way. So that, yeah, I just wanted to speak into that. It was a really beautiful way of expressing that. So thank you.
Thank you. I was wondering, earlier today, Sumeet, you touched on it a little bit when you mentioned technology. You talked about Tinder, porn has come up. We live in an age where technology is just such a dominant part of our culture. I'm wondering what your experience has been with technology and healthy sexuality, and how do we, like, A, what are some of the issues that are associated with that, but B, what can we do to harness this technological era to create a healthier sexuality for each other and ourselves?
Yeah, this is a very important question. So I would say the biggest thing is pornography, because it has wide-ranging and very severe, side effects. Some of them being, anxiety, depression, loneliness, low self-esteem, lack of motivation, because of the effects on the brain, right? Because when we watch pornography, there's an influx of dopamine in the brain. And so just like with drug, your brain becomes sensitized. And so what that means is, just like with weed or alcohol, you keep needing more to experience the same effects. So how that translates into relationships and sex is that now regular sex is not exciting anymore, right? Because why would it be? We can watch all kinds of things at any time of day, all kinds of like niches and kinks. And the thing with pornography, that's a really high, unrealistic standard for both men and women, where these people have like plastic surgery and they have makeup and great lighting and they have like the ideal body shape and highest standards of beauty. And it's, who's gonna measure up to this? You know, so how this is translating into relationships is, you know, one person losing attraction to the other person, right? Because they're with this person and meanwhile they're fantasizing about sex while they're with them, or their partner's not can't there's no way they can possibly compete with what's on the internet. So porn is having this dulling effect where it numbs sensuality, sensitivity to our partners, to our own sexuality, and it's leading to a lot of addiction um, and like and guys, they withdrawal. If they haven't watched porn in a while, they get like these physical symptoms of being very nervous and edgy. So porn is leading to, I would say that's a huge effect it has on a relationship. Unrealistic expectations, we're losing attraction to our partners, because instant access to all of these high quality porn with unrealistic expectations. So
Can you
so
touch
that's in terms of porn.
Can you touch on a healthy recommendation for the use of porn?
Well, maybe as a way to just explore.
Is there a way that we can approach it or create some healthy boundaries around it, or yeah?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely do, if a person's in a relationship, to kind of create some boundaries around it, to understand the effects that it has, and maybe set up limitations, like maybe I'll just watch on the weekends or something like that, just to limit it, and have maybe the other partner be supportive and in a way that's healthy. That look like maybe, for example, based on what Monica and Jennifer are saying, like for BDSM, if there's something that's new, something that's unfamiliar. Okay, so you can watch how other people are engaging in this. How are they being playful, and what kind of tools are they using? How are they communicating? So they can be like instructive in that way. How can it be sensual? It could, I think, maybe be helpful for people to see it kind of in this way that is kind of like healthy and being playful. It doesn't have to be damaging. Everything has good bad. But it definitely should be limited. Yeah, so that's in terms of pornography. I would say in terms of something like Tinder and apps. It's leading it. What that does is kind of it's conditioning people to be more superficial. So again, it's speaking of physical intimacy and the lack of emotional intimacy. I was talking about before, where
right, the online dating kind of apps.
Pardon?
And you're speaking specifically to the online dating apps and stuff that's out there, and people engaging with each other purely through technology. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So what that's done to this just notion of courtship, right? Where now, we have people sending nudes to strangers. It's like, whoa, what is that? It's like this is your body, and the thing is, something that the more rare something is, the more meaning it acquires, right? Like that's how economics works as well. Like the more money that's in print, the less values. And the same thing is happening with sex. Since sex is everywhere, it's just expected. Now it has less value. People don't revere it. It's not this sacred thing. Like, yeah, it's something that I can get whenever. I can go on Tinder, I can just masturbate to some porn. Like, okay, but what if you save that sexual energy? What if you allow it to build up? What if you saved it for someone who's really deserving of it, like through this kind of initiation, right? Seeing if they're worthy of trust, because what kind of message are you sending? What's like sending nudes, like, yeah, this is my physical intimacy. Here's my body, and just anyone can see. There's no, you don't have to like be worthy of it and things like that. And now when you go on Tinder, there's hardly any text, so it's what's happening is people are, all you have to go for is how someone looks. And so I tried it once, and I noticed that there is nothing else to go off of. I'm just finding myself being like, yeah, this one has a big nose, and their eyes kind of like asymmetrical. Like I didn't like the person I was becoming while I was using it. I feel like a piece of meat or like something on a shelf. Like no, I don't want that. No, I don't want that. It's like this
Yeah.
isn't the way to do it. So, just to kind of wrap it up, I would say that this online dating, it supports what is doing the trip is like this perfectionism, you know, um, of all these algorithms, like if you go on OkCupid, you do all these tests. What is this? Is like love has become an exam now, or like I gotta find the perfect person to believe all that I do politically and socially. They have to have the same beliefs, and there's a score that matches you up. Is like what happened when people just spontaneously run into each other. Um, so I feel like that has there's that perfectionism. There's all these algorithms where, and now technology, especially for young kids, there's lack of empathy now and connection, where people know how to read like facial expressions and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and it's really having a damaging effect dating because, um, because for both men and women, because now what I'm seeing a lot in practice and what I'm reading online in my research is that average men feel like they can't be, because of something like under women have access to men of the highest social status, right? And that makes sense, evolutionarily, biologically, like, but at the same time, men also have access to younger women too. So that's something I'm reading about for women as well too. Um, when they're in the 30s or stuff like that, they're having a harder time because men are more in younger women, and that's again because of online dating and Tinder. Because before these things arrived, we didn't have such instant access to whoever we consider as ideal, you know.
Right.
So it's kind of wreaking havoc on dating and
Yeah, I hear you.
sexuality, if you ask
A
me.
lot
But
of challenges there for sure. I'd like to move on to some of the other questions that we have. Jennifer and Monica, have you noticed the impact of technology, or do you have anything to say or respond to in terms of like this topic?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's not the realm that that I work in a lot, because the women that I work with, what we do is we try and take our focus back inward, back into ourselves. I personally, I loved online dating. I thought it was really neat. And I'll share, the reason I loved it is because it's an energetic thing. And so when you look at it from that angle, then it becomes this fun, interesting, curious game. Personally, I noticed that I would actually receive more replies when I was ovulating. And I mean, no one knew that except me. But energetically, that was simply the frequency that I was sending out. And so that's how I liked to use dating apps. When it comes to viewing things online, I believe that there are healthy ways to go about everything. I believe that there's everything in moderation, which is something that I, always remember my mom saying, everything in moderation. I think that there are beautiful representations. Oh my gosh, sorry.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Trace fire protection commence.
Okay, so Jennifer is going through an announcement, fire protection, while talking about the energetic connection of technology.
Yeah, interesting. That was the fire alarm, or the intercom saying, ignore all fire alarms, it's only a test. Yes, when it comes to online porn, I think that there's a lot of really damaging stuff out there. And I think that if there was more talk about it, if it wasn't something that was pushed under the rug, if it wasn't something that was shamed, then we might have the chance of seeing, wait a second, there's actually some really beautiful films out there. I know a lot of women who, especially when I was living in New York, who are really trying to shift the paradigm when it comes to conscious pornography and making sure that all parties are consenting adults, and they're shot in ways where both parties are honored. And I think that this is beautiful. This is what we need to see. And so when it's brought out to the light, anything that's demonized and shamed is going to go into the shadow. Anything that we say, wait a second, sexuality is the one thing that every single human being shares. It's how we came into being. Why is this the one thing that is so shamed and so pushed under the rug? So I believe that as things are allowed to come out to the light and as we have more conversations about them, then the beauty of it is seen. We're able to find those things that are beautiful about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd like to move into a couple of our audience questions. I do believe that your answers have, so far, like a lot of the discussion, has touched on some of the questions that we already had. One, though, this is specifically about when your male partner can't maintain their erection, what's the best way, the most sensitive and effective approach to approach it with them? And they ask, how might they not end up feeling it has something to do with them? And so I don't know if that's the female not feeling like the erection issue is to do with them, or the male. But what is the most sensitive and effective approach to deal with this in a relationship?
Okay. So I think this is.
I'll jump. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I think this affects a lot of men. Erectile dysfunction, I hear about it a bit.
Sumeet, if you could just keep it to 1 minute, because I have another question that I need to ask as well. Yeah, I'll hear from you.
Okay,
Sumeet,
sure.
and Monica as well. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just to keep it quick, I would say just speak about it gently with compassion. For men, some it could be related to stress in a lot of cases. Guys might have a lot going on, and with a lot of guys, it's hard for them. Could be hard for them to open up. So I would just kind of just ask, what's going on in your life? How are you handling things? Sometimes it can also be about performance anxiety. Comparing ourselves to others. And pornography does play a big role in that. Yeah, and so what I would recommend is maybe you can help your partner find some ways to relax, like meditation, yoga, whatever. Put some nice calming music on. Just talk about, hey, what's bothering you in your mind. And thirdly, in terms of something practical, there's herbs you can take like ginkgo biloba and ginseng, which are really good for long-lasting erections and blood flow, circulation. So those could be worthwhile into looking into.
Thank you. Thank you. Monica, you were about to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me just turn my mic around. I think patience is the most important thing. I think whether it's a man who's struggling to maintain an erection or a woman who's struggling to get aroused and get lubricated, one of the worst things one of the worst traps that people fall into is this sense of displaying disappointment or pressure on their partner, which then further spirals their partner into shame. And then the situation, oh God, this is what happened last time. Is it going to happen again? Is this person going to be disappointed? And then the whole people forget how to actually enjoy a moment. Even if somebody doesn't have an erection, there are so many other ways that intimacy can be shared and pleasure can be shared. So many openness, vulnerability on behalf of both people, just, with one person checking in and saying, okay, what do you need right now? Do you need to slow down a little bit? Is there another way that I can give you pleasure, or any other activity that we can switch to? And to keep that conversation moving back and forth, rather than just ending things and leaving this weird, awkward static in the room of, oh, something that didn't work out, and now there's this tension between two people. I hear about a lot of that from my male clients, and I think just staying with the experience and leaning into it, even as arousal can be a struggle, and it can be a struggle for a number of reasons. Like Sumeet said, there could be something else going on in this person's life, something else that's stressing them out, which is impeding their ability to actually drop into their body and access their eros. It's not necessarily about the partner. So I think what's important for anyone of any sex or any gender is to not take things personally if your partner isn't aroused. There's only so much we can do to help facilitate arousal for another person by asking questions, creating a safe space, listening attentively, and providing the circumstances to help invite their arousal. But ultimately, if they're stressed out, if they're shut down, if they're not in a place emotionally where they can access that, then it's not your fault as the partner of that person. And to just let that be, and to notice where else pleasure can be found.
Thank you. It's tricky. We have 2 minutes left, and we have about, I think, 4 more questions that I was hoping to get through. I think it would be really nice to hear from you guys, because you've touched on so many topics. There are, I'm going to do something new that I haven't done before. I'm going to give you guys a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask you guys to respond to one of them. So it doesn't just, one was about men and women and how they are aroused in different ways or similar ways. What have you noticed about that? And what can you share with people to help them understand the differences between male and female arousal? The other was your tips for creating, knowing that a healthy sexual relationship is like, what are the signs of a healthy sexual relationship? And how can we nurture and develop that? So when as you answer these things, just keep in mind time, please, just out of respect for our audience and yourselves. So yeah, who would like to go first? Jennifer, we haven't heard from you in a little while. Is there one that you'd like to take a jump in on?
Yeah, I definitely feel called to speak into the healthy sexual relationship. Again, so much around communication. I don't think that one can have a healthy sexual relationship without a healthy emotional relationship. And so how to strengthen that, sitting and eye gazing with each other is one of the most powerful practices. And for a lot of people, this is actually very confronting, to simply look at another person. It can bring up a lot of discomfort. And so my greatest tip is to sit there and notice the discomfort that arises. And there was, I forget the question that you asked, but what went through my mind was, do you find yourself ah, do you find yourself noticing, like thinking something and not saying it? And that's a great telltale that there can be more communication, that there's something that's off, is if you are in a situation and in your mind you're saying, I don't actually like this, or ooh, I wish that something was a little different, and you're not actually speaking it. And so strengthening that muscle of communication. And then I think, this is something that I'm sure Monica uh, can speak into quite a bit, but in terms of being aroused in different or similar ways, men and women are absolutely aroused in different ways, and women will need a lot more time. And it also relates to the archetypes of masculine and feminine, is that the masculine sees and does, whereas the feminine desires to be seen and simply be. And so beings that have a predominant feminine essence, feminine sexual essence, will take longer, will want to be honored and seen and respected, whereas those with a more masculine sexual essence, there will be more action involved, and more doing involved, whereas of course both parties need to be seen and honored. The timing of that is going to be much different. And so I'll say that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica and Sumeet, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just to spin off of what Jennifer was saying, yin and yang, right? I always check in with people, regardless of their gender, if they identify as a more yin being or a yang being. Yin being the one that's slower to warm up and needing, in terms of arousal, and outside an approach to start with words of affirmation, respect, full body touch, and just really warming everything up before the genitals are approached. And the yang sexuality just being more like a firecracker, quick to ignite. You can start at the center, go straight for the genitals, and they're good to go. So I would say that roughly coincides with most women identifying as yin and most men identifying as yang, but there are exceptions. So to check in best for your body. All right, that's all for me. Keep it short.
Thanks. Yeah. Sumeet, did you want to add anything? Or
yeah, I can speak to sexual difference between the genders. So for me, it'd be primarily about, so men, for us, it's mostly about novelty, and for women, it's mostly about connection. And from an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense, because we're wired to kind of always be seeking new sexual partners, kind of propagate, the human species, right? And so this is something we're always against, right? Our libidos is like constantly, they're always on, so what happens over time is men can lose sexual attraction towards women, and it's shown in some studies that when men have new sexual partners, they actually experience more pleasure, right? A stronger orgasm. And for women, it's things like different kinds of intimacy. I find some more varied, emotional intimacy sometimes, because there's more factors in. For a guy, we joke that, we could, even if the house is on fire, like, still want to have sex, right? Like, that kind of gets that I'm talking about, where women, if they have like a bad day, it's like kind of, hey, maybe not today, right? Kind of thing. Where there's factors like mood and stress and, respect, do I feel respected, and I think men can benefit them a lot, because like with men, it's kind of just like in and out, let's do this, let it get this over with. I feel like men could benefit a lot from just going down. So how you address these things, so for women, it could be like, how can I introduce some novelty into the sexual relationship, keep things fresh, different, like toys, games, music, massage, role play. And for men, can I, really honor, a woman's body and her emotions, and how can I make this a more slow and sensual experience, yeah, so for me, that's what it comes down to. That does have biological and evolutionary root, and yeah, that we can work with, through our behavior.
Thank you. You guys did a great job keeping it succinct. Wow, it's a pretty incredible topic, and I feel like we really just scratched the surface. I'm not sure if you guys would agree that it warrants another panel. From my understanding today, we touched on so many layers. Like, there was the impact of technology and porn. There was sexuality and arousal as like a sacred experience, and how do we increase our presence and our understanding of the feminine and the masculine essence that resides in us, and create healthier conversations, and be able to communicate our needs, with our partners. How do we take it fast or take it slow and still keep that self-respect and respect for each other? So there was so much that we touched on. I really appreciate you guys, our panelists today, to really show up for these conversations. And I'm really grateful also for all of our participants today. You really, you showed up, you sent me so many questions. I hope that we touched on, I think we touched on about half of them. So I would love to see us do this again. So without further ado, I'd like to just thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you for continuing to have these conversations after this panel is done, so that we can keep on doing the work. This is certainly just a tip of the iceberg. So yeah, Jennifer, Sumeet, Monica, did you want to say farewell?
Yeah, thanks for running this one, and practice healthy sexuality and have a nice, loving connection with self as well, and love bodies.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It's always a pleasure to talk about this and to open the conversation. I think that's really the most important thing, is to open the conversation and to keep it going.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and thank you, Melanie, for organizing. It was a great pleasure to be here and chat about one of my most favorite topics. And hope to see you all again next time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.